When Sonic ended up in the Backrooms, he came across another entity that kind of scared him. But in a race to the death, Sonic drowns. But that entity, which apparently was evil, jumped into the sea to save his life. And with Sonic unconscious, they went to the exit, reached level 37, and kept going. Meanwhile, Tails and Sonic's crew are getting ready to enter the portal so they can head to where Sonic is. Meanwhile, Sonic and the entity end up encountering a strange creature, which kind of takes Sonic's nightmare, and a very familiar face. Man, Sonic in the Backrooms was one of the pleasant surprises among fan-made comics created and drawn by Sue Agnes. This girl here is basically the artist who ended up taking this concept, mixing the Sonic universe with the Backrooms universe. And of course, since the last time I talked about it here on the channel, several updates have been released and she is very engaged with this story. So let's check it out. Here for part 2, which is the continuation of the first comic. Not to mention that if you've seen the first comic here, I'm going to tell you to skip to the timestamp that's on the screen. Why? Because I'm going to talk about it now. But for those who are arriving here by surprise and don't want to get lost, you can definitely watch here because I'm also going to talk about comic 1. But if you've already seen the first part, skip to the timestamp that's on the screen. That's where the story continues. The comic starts with Sonic simply trying to find a way out of a very strange place, known here as the Backrooms. A place famous for having several yellowish corridors, which seem to have more worn-out floors, and that practically have endless paths, as if it were a huge maze and you never get anywhere. These corridors here are practically uncomfortable, and they went viral on the internet because of a viral short film. These corridors here seem to never lead anywhere. And it also seems like small creatures might be living there, but in a very suspicious way. The place is completely uncomfortable, and there's never a clear way out. This place is a space-time paradox, so much so that you can't tell which direction or time period you're in, since things and objects from the past, present, and even the future can appear at the same time, because time there doesn't work the way we know it. Objects appear here, being remembered and forgotten all the time. For example, they might seem familiar, or they might seem more uncomfortable. That's what the Backrooms are. An environment with endless hallways and rooms, yellow wallpaper, strange carpet, and a buzzing sound that comes from all these lights scattered throughout this place. How Sonic ended up there is still a mystery, but the story begins there. He's trapped there, but he doesn't realize that behind him, a creature that's somewhat familiar but taller was watching and following him, looking like Sonic, but his appearance is a bit strange. Turning and facing this creature, he becomes completely terrified and breaks out in a cold sweat, staring at that giant creature as if he were nothing, tiny compared to its enormous size. Here he has a slightly creepy doubled smile, as if it were a mirror distortion. 2 muzzles, several different irises, 2 pairs of ears, and he stares without any kind of fear, as if he were, saying hello, hello, As if it were friendlier. Even so, Sonic doesn't look at him in a friendly way. He's terrified by the situation, and he does the only thing he can do: run. Desperate, he shouts that there's no way someone like him could catch up. He needs to shake him off, but the other hedgehog is there, chasing him at the same speed. He runs at full speed, but he ends up falling into a hole where his spin dash lets him go down a few more levels, and from there, he takes the path ahead, putting a lot of distance between them. Landing in a superhero pose, he thinks everything is fine, looks around, but then realizes something terrible, something scarier than the other Sonic: the pool level. The Backrooms are huge, but the further you go, you end up finding different levels. The pool level is here. There are several corridors, but the difference is that they have like a pool-like design. Those pools that just keep stretching and stretching without knowing where they end. Sonic faces that and thinks it's a joke. But when he faces it, the other hedgehog ends up getting really close. Not only that, but he copies the same pose, as if they were the same thing, and he knew exactly how Sonic would act. So, Sonic tries to calm things down and talks to him. He proposes one thing: a race. If he wins, Sonic will stay with him, trapped. But if he wins, he gets to leave. And the creature seems calmer. He actually responds well to Sonic, and he also listens to him. Unlike other entities that Sonic has faced over all these years, the being here ends up showing a big smile and keeps agreeing with him without saying a single word. After all, he is the hedgehog, and he is also Sonic. That way, he also wants to join a race, and looking scared, he says not to hold him back. Getting ready and starting off, the two begin to run. They go really fast over the water and also grab some grids here to keep sliding. Sonic runs at super speed, which allows him to float over the water, but he also grabs some buoys to use as a boost. The big thing is that here, Sonic is literally facing another version of himself. But he's duplicated and a bit taller. Would those longer legs be able to beat him in terms of speed? While Sonic is running, he feels really uncomfortable and even wonders if that place is endless and has no end. So he changes the bet. He says that whoever finds the exit wins, and the other hedgehog ends up agreeing. What's even scarier is that he only responds with gestures and never speaks. Sonic keeps running and finds some very familiar signs, showing that that place, the break room, has already connected with his world several times. And he wonders why that place keeps getting bigger the more he runs. But for some reason, Sonic started to get really tired. And that doesn't make sense to him, since he's never gotten tired from running so much. But his determination makes him want to keep going, and he keeps going. He says he hasn't felt this bad since the time he was infected by a virus, and that this place needs to have an exit. There has to be an end. Leaving the water zone, he ends up entering another large room. He stops for a second and stares at what's in front of him, but he can't believe that what he's seeing is real. There's practically a huge sea of water in front of him, but he's not afraid. He wants to keep going because he needs to find a way out and doesn't want to be trapped in this place anymore. He stretches and gets ready. He's about to leave. Energizing himself, he runs at his highest speed, creating a huge wave wherever he goes. His speed is so high, so incredibly high, that he ends up breaking the sound barrier. He starts to notice several details ahead that suggest there could be a wall or maybe even a way out. He keeps running, passing by each of those pillars and corridors. He's moving at his incredibly fast speed, going way beyond what he usually does in aquatic places. Mentally re-energizing himself, he moves forward, where he finds a huge wall and what seems to be an exit. But when he gets really close to that end, he ends up finding that other hedgehog. He realizes that the other one managed to win and that he's going to keep Sonic trapped in this place. So, tired, Sonic gives up, falling into the water and drowning. Already unconscious and nearly drowned, the other hedgehog falls into the water, stopping Sonic from falling into the darkness since it seems like this pool has no bottom. There, this other hedgehog ends up grabbing Sonic and pulling him by his arm. And unlike the original hedgehog, he can swim, and he ends up pulling Sonic back out of the pool. He feels a little sad about the situation and Sonic is still unconscious, so he ends up taking Sonic to the big exit, which leads them to floor 37, and they keep running. Unlike other Sonic adaptations in other universes, this one is the craziest because it picks up on some details from the Backrooms, which went viral years ago. And it even got a movie here that caught the attention of a completely new crowd. Sonic, by himself, should be able to escape from anywhere in the Backrooms, since he ended up dealing with alternate dimensions, and he ended up facing much more powerful creatures. A classic example here is Infinity, who would end up creating his own dimension, and he would end up throwing several challenges that go beyond Sonic's abilities, or when he entered cyberspace to, complete missions inside Sonic Frontiers. These environments were much more familiar to Sonic, so he was able to have some control over everything there. The big issue is that Backrooms put him on a level completely surrounded by pool water, which makes him completely scared. The panic of dealing with this other version of Sonic, which seemed, in a way, like it wanted to save him. It made him lose a bit of his energy and go into survival mode. It's the kind of situation that puts Sonic face to face with himself. But he started to get completely tired and terrified because he wasn't sure what was coming. Look, to be honest, it's a much more nerfed form of Sonic. But the person who is creating this comic already really liked the impact this had, and has already started working on new adaptations and continuations, because it looks like this series is going to have a future. In fact, on the day I'm recording this video, some new things have already come out. Sonic is saved and taken to a kind of pink house, a house with cats, where he stays asleep. The entity basically put Sonic to sleep and was happy with that situation. But while Sonic is resting, he also ends up sleeping, waiting for the alarm clock to wake him up. Outside, near Grand Hill, Tails is worried because Sonic is untraceable. In other words, he has no idea where the hedgehog is. And Amy is also worried. This situation is so alarming that many other characters ended up showing up here. Knuckles is worried, thinking that Sonic is in danger. And even Silver shows up here, saying that if Sonic can't be tracked here, it seems like he was taken to another reality. But surprisingly, the one who ends up showing up here is Dr. Eggman, saying that he has a clue about where Sonic might have gone, and that they should follow him to understand what's going on. And this kind of information is so surprising that even Knuckles can't understand the situation. A certain tension appears in the air here. Both Knuckles and Shadow become much more apprehensive, and Tails is more aggressive, trying to understand why on earth Dr. Eggman would want to help. Eggman makes it very clear that he wants to destroy and keep Sonic far away from him, but it's better to have Sonic nearby than for him to just disappear out of nowhere. And Tails should be grateful, because he's going to help speed up the search for the hedgehog much faster. Amy tries to calm Tails down, since Eggman has already helped Sonic in other situations in the past, and Tails ends up agreeing, feeling a little calmer. After a few minutes of walking, Dr. Eggman says he found a strange anomaly here inside this symbol that was drawn in the shape of a door on one of the walls of Grand Hill. It looks like Sonic was taken to this place, and his last vital sign was seen outside this door. Tails also finds that strange, and he believes that kind of portal might have drawn Sonic inside. That way, they would have to get ready in order to go through that door, and on top of that, Eggman even adds to it, saying that after going through that portal, no other vital sign is seen, as if it were some kind of wormhole, where whoever enters is practically taken to another moment of another evil scheme. He goes on to say that if everyone is going after Sonic, everyone needs to be prepared, because that place is an endless maze of yellow walls, and he warns that it's an endless maze of yellow walls and musty carpets. Shadow takes the lead here and says we don't have time to waste, and that everyone should get ready to go after that other hedgehog. And of course, Rouge even jokes about the situation, showing that, wow, Shadow is really worried about the hedgehog, and he quickly cuts Rouge off saying, quiet. Well, after a few days, Sonic finally wakes up in that pink bed. He feels a little better after having slept, but he gets startled by that entity just staring at him, without any movement or reaction. He's there, kind of nervous to find out that he's trapped together with the other creature, and she's really happy, showing a smile and joy because he woke up. But Sonic shows that he also has another problem. He hasn't eaten for several days and needs to eat. So, the entity ends up getting up and going after something for the hedgehog. He makes some signs and gestures here, trying to make Sonic understand that they're going to have dinner, and he starts to smell something nice. In other words, a giant plate of chili dogs. Sonic's favorite food. He gets happy and thanks the entity because it ended up cooking all that for him. He eats the chili dogs and loves it, because for him, it's going to be the best food ever. It's like the saying, hunger is the best seasoning. Then, the entity opens its big mouth to eat, showing that it has lots and lots of teeth. It even reminds him of Shin Sonic's mouth, which scares the real Sonic. But the other one, the entity, ends up loving the chili dogs too. And Sonic concludes that it's actually good because it really is the hedgehog himself. Despite everything, they spent a week here inside that pink house full of kittens, and Sonic ends up getting a stylish outfit, a jacket here that looks like a high school uniform, and meeting this strange being here who pronounces the numbers 0623. Both Sonic and the entity leave, thanking them for the stay, and of course, they give him a little Sonic plushie. Then, the two set off into the unknown. Outside, Sonic struggles with the glare that hits his face, and he arrives here in a setting full of hills, slopes, and a straight path. But Sonic starts to have a strange feeling, as if something bad is about to happen. But they have no other choice. They have to keep moving forward, so they quickly speed up. And after running for a long time, something catches the hedgehog's attention. He stops and stares at the biggest hill of all, with a large castle on top. A very unique house among all the others around the vast Backrooms landscape. Staring at that makes Sonic start to feel sick. A strong headache hits him, and even the entity notices that he's not well. Then, Sonic starts to have a bit of a panic attack, where he begins to breathe heavily, as if he were losing his sanity and his mind was falling apart. He goes into complete despair, wanting to feel normal, but he can't. Then, the entity quickly scoops Sonic up and takes him away. It brings him inside one of those houses, taking him completely away from the final objective, and it starts rummaging through a strange refrigerator. Inside, Sonic ends up resting, wondering what's happening to him since he doesn't feel like this. He's not like this. Then, the entity grabs a bottle for him, which is a kind of almond water. He says that's not ideal for the situation, but it might help. So, he starts drinking it. While the entity kind of unwraps another snack for him here. After drinking, Sonic realizes he feels a little better and thanks him. The entity feels a bit calmer because of that, but he ends up handing over that package of food he had with him and warns that at night they shouldn't go out because it's dangerous. So, Sonic agrees, saying that's all for today, and he asks exactly what that water is because for some reason it was making him feel better and healing him. The entity explains that the more almond water, milk, almonds, and things like that he consumes, the better his mind gets. And if he eats and drinks at the same time, he becomes much more aware and sane. It's a way not to go crazy inside this universe. And he explains that if you don't stop to eat and drink and nourish yourself, your sanity will start to slip away, implying that something terrible would happen to Sonic if he kept running outside without stopping to rest. Sonic even ends up telling the entity that it reminds him of another creature, a friend, a partner, who also helped him in various situations, Tails himself. This makes the entity very happy, but he doesn't know who Tails is, implying that this entity, just like Sonic, only exists there with limited information and memories from his own body. This explains why he knew how to swim and was able to save the hedgehog. Even so, Sonic still feels a bit uneasy about the situation, wondering where the others are, how he's going to escape from there, if the others are looking for Sonic inside that world, and of course, what could be inside that castle when he finally goes there the next day. That's because outside the house where they are, giant creatures start walking around, waiting for their next victim. The next day, everything starts anew. The entity begins to carry a large amount of almond water in his backpack, and the two set off for the castle, which is on the highest hill of all the hills. When Sonic reaches that door, he starts to feel a bit uneasy again about the situation, as if something bad is about to happen, but he needs to keep moving forward, because that's the goal. Using his homing attack, he heads inside the castle. That castle has a very different look, even completely changing its style. It actually reminds me of that Sonic Colors Ultimate animation. If you think so too, or not, comment here, okay? Anyway, the entity is confused, but Sonic is a bit more tired than usual. Sonic doesn't exactly like the setting he's in. That castle isn't exactly what he imagined, but he has to keep going in this place, even though it's a bit weird. Again, he starts to feel really bad inside that castle, but he speeds up to finish this place quickly. After running through many corridors, Sonic faces something familiar. Robots. Strange robots that look like toys from the 60s. These robots are guards and start shooting at Sonic. They try to fire shots and bombs that explode around him, but they always end up missing. Both Sonic and the entity manage to dodge very skillfully, but Sonic starts to fight back. You can see that the entity also starts attacking the robots after Sonic lands his first blow. With that, they end up clearing a big path. But while Sonic is moving forward, heading to the end of the Great Castle, Sonic's group is getting ready to invade the Backrooms. Tails and his crew joined forces, using both Tails and Robotnik's technology to find a way to get inside the Backrooms. Tails is now protected from radiation and infection. Together they built a large portal over that symbol, though it's a bit scary. They end up realizing that inside those Backrooms the air is... Realizing that inside the Backrooms, the air isn't that toxic. So toxic as they might imagine. Some prefer to wear masks, others don't. Robotnik and Tails have an idea to split up since the place is so toxic. They can explore different places much faster this way. The two of them put various technologies in their clothes and suits to make sure everyone could be located. So here we have Eggman's team, made up of Rouge, Silver, Shadow, and Robotnik himself with his walker, the Egg Walk, while we also have Tails, Amy, and Knuckles' team searching that place. As Sonic moved forward inside the big castle, he came across the figure of what would be the king, the owner of the castle, who didn't really like the attitude of the hedgehogs, which was, let's say, very insubordinate. Since Sonic was a tough character and the king's challenge was basically to make his worst nightmares come true, that guy basically turned into a new entity. A bizarre being, a copy of Tails, who not only scares Sonic, but also asks why Sonic ended up abandoning them? This is where part 2 ends. Yes, this is the Backrooms saga. It's not complete yet, but the creator is working hard to finish it, really putting in a lot of effort to make these comics happen. Remember, it's Swagness. I'll leave the link in my description for you to follow, but as soon as there are new updates, whether in long videos or shorts, I'll end up posting them here so you can keep up with more of this story. Honestly, out of all the fan creations based on Sonic, this is one of the most interesting stories we've seen. Not because it's based on creepypasta. No, it's based on those internet urban legends. The Backrooms has a whole universe of its own, but this is the first time I've seen it with Sonic. And that's it. Thank you so much, take care, see you in the next video.